Imagine a long-distance runner, running and running until the point of exhaustion and running more and having to keep going. It's willpower, it's perseverance that makes the runner continue to run against all the odds. This is the kind of perseverance that is required in following the way of God. Drawing back is not an option. Always perseverance, always going forward, always a new dedication. Time is always changing, is always inviting us to persevere, to make another act of commitment, to go further forward. It is this perseverance that Imam Hussain displays with great clarity during his time going through the desert toward Kufa. We know that the city of Kufa in Iraq has played a prominent part in the history of the Ahl al-Bayt, because it was soldiers from the garrison town of Kufa who came to the assistance of Imam Ali during the Battle of the Camel. And after that, the Imam moved his headquarters to Kufa and established a simple house there, which became his residence. Now, the people of Kufa at one time are very strong in support. At another time, during the Battle of Siffin, they really are not quite so strong. They want to go home. They want to draw back. Part of this is because there are leaders in Kufa who were doing very well before Imam Ali laid down the equality of all human beings and insisted that everybody should be treated equally. So the history of Kufa was always sometimes hot and sometimes cold. This becomes important because from the moment that it's known that Muawiyah has died, people of Kufa start writing letters, and they are writing letters to Imam Hussain in Medina. They are encouraging him to rise up, to call a revolt, a rebellion against the Umayyad leadership. And some of these letters are just from a single author, and some of them have multiple authors, but all of them carry the same message. Our lives are with you. Our money will support you. Our swords will fight for you. Our lives are at your service. Come to Kufa. Come and call the rebellion. We are waiting. We are ready. We will form an army here in your support. Now, Imam Hussain knew the history. He knew the background, and he had a profound knowledge and understanding of human nature. And so he needed to check out whether or not the people of Kufa truly were behind him, as their letters suggested. He needed a man that he could trust to go to find out. And so he sent his cousin, Muslim ibn Aqil. He was to go, he was to speak to the leaders, he was to speak to the ordinary people, and he was to assess whether or not they could be relied upon. So Muslim ibn Aqil traveled across during Ramadan to the city of Kufa. He met with the elders, he met with the people, and they began to convince him that there was a strong body of support, that they would stand by the Imam when he came, that their lives and their money and their swords would be at his disposal. And so he wrote a letter to Imam Hussain to give him a report of what he'd found, to tell him, you should come. here there is a strong group of people, an army awaits you. Of course, the message did not escape the governor of Kufa, did not escape those people in Kufa who were the supporters of Yazid, and so they wrote to Yazid to tell him what was happening, that Muslim Ibn Aqil was traveling freely amongst the people, was awakening their sense of commitment to Imam Hussain. Now, Yazid needed a new governor, needed a hard man, needed somebody in whom he could rely. And that man was Ibn Ziyad. Ibn Ziyad had a very uncertain history and background, because Ziyad, his father, was of unknown parentage until it was declared that he was in fact a half-brother of Muawiyah, and this gave him all the status within that society. And so Ibn Ziyad, his son, shared in that status, but you see, everything depended upon the goodwill, upon the proclamation of Muawiyah and of Yazid that Ibn Ziyad was indeed related to them. Now you can see the cunning here of Yazid. Use a man who owes everything to you, and he will do your bidding. And this was the man, Ibn Ziyad, who was sent to be the new governor of Kufa. And when he arrived, he soon put a stop to the work of Muslim Ibn Aqil, drawing people together to support Imam Hussain. He had him killed. He had his body desecrated as a sign to other people that they should not follow in his footsteps. The body was dragged through the streets of the city. The leading people who had supported him, they were also killed, and their bodies were desecrated. So in this way, Ibn Ziyad has actually cut the ground out from underneath the support of the Imam in Kufa. And some people went to give a report to Imam Hussain, the real situation that awaited him in Kufa. Now the Imam was traveling through the desert at this time, and the messengers came to him to say, there is no army that awaits you. There is no sword, there is no money, there is no life at your disposal. And they reported the way in which Muslim Ibn Aqil and the other leading supporters of Imam Hussain had been killed. What was Hussain to do at this time? Because this meant that there was no reception committee awaiting him, no support. We see now the strength of the character of the Imam. Some military leaders might not have told their people what had happened, might have led them to believe that the army that they were expecting to be there and awaiting them was indeed there. This was not the way of Imam Hussain. Rather, instead, he called all the community together, men and women, so that they should all be completely in the picture. And he explained what had happened in Kufa. He explained that the people who said they would support him indeed will not be there, will not support him, and therefore those who went forward with Imam Hussain were going forward without the expectation of help coming from any other quarter. Now we know that when Imam Hussain left Mecca and went off into the desert, there were some people from Mecca who accompanied him. They had heard about the letters from Kufa. They were expecting, therefore, that there would be an army to come to their assistance. They were expecting a victory. Now it wasn't at all so sure. Indeed, it seemed highly unlikely that there would be any victory if Imam Hussain was brought to battle. And so some of these people from Mecca began to drift off. And there had been others who had joined on the way and who were of the company of Imam Hussain, and they began to drift off too. Eventually, they had all gone except for the original party that left Medina. This was largely comprised of family members of Imam Hussain, those who were closely related to him, and some of his close companions and supporters amongst the people of Medina. And their ages ranged from maybe in their middle 70s to a small baby at the breast, and many different ages in between. So it was a collective group of men and women and children, and they were prepared to commit themselves in the sure knowledge that the people of Kufar would not be waiting for them, but in faith and trust of the Imam, they would go forward with him. And so again we see this spirit of perseverance. Keep going. When the going gets tough, then the tough get going. So this was the spirit of this whole company journeying with Imam Hussain through the desert. Now they experienced the privations of the desert. They experienced the heat, and they experienced the cold of night. They experienced the searching for water and the thirst when water was short. They experienced the problems of making food, of making camp, the journey on horseback, the ladies on camels, the swaying of the camels, the constant movement, the dust, the dirt, and of course, the children. The children who needed to be looked after, whose spirits had to be kept high, not just their physical needs, but not just their physical needs, but their spirits also had to be kept up so that they could persevere with this journey. And so they went on, day after day, going toward an unknown future. Because Imam Hussain knew what awaited them. At least he knew that it would result in his death and in the death of some members of his family and captivity for others. This much he knew, and he had an inkling of the place where this would happen, at least by name. And yet the others, their faith was in the Imam. He will not let us down. He is the totally committed servant of God. If he says yes, we say yes. We go with the Imam. And so we see that tremendous spirit of trust and perseverance. In the Imam, yes, but that's not enough, because through the Imam, their trust and perseverance was in the pledge of God, that this was the will of God and that they would follow it through to the bitter end, come what may, they would persevere.